Hi, everyone.
Good day. In Genesis, we've reached chapter 37, and we're going to read 1 to 11, the interaction between Joseph and his brethren.
Now Jacob dwelt in the land where his father was a stranger in the land of Canaan. This was the history of Jacob. Joseph, being 17 years old, was feeding the flock with his brothers. And the lad was with the sons of Bilhah and the sons of Zilpah, his father's wives. And Joseph brought a bad report of them to his father. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his children, because he was the son of his old age. Also he made him a tunic of many colors. But when his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all of his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably to him. Now Joseph had a dream, and he told it to his brothers, and they hated him even more. So he said to them, "Please hear this dream, which I have dreamed.
Behold, we were binding sheaves in the field, and behold, my sheaf arose and stood upright. And behold, your sheaves gathered around it and bowed down to my sheaf." His brothers said to him, "Are you indeed to reign over us? Or are you indeed to rule over us?" So they hated him even more for his dreams and for his words. Then he dreamed another dream, and told it to his brothers, and said, "Behold, I have dreamed another dream. Behold, the sun, the moon, and 11 stars were bowing down to me." But when he told it to his father and to his brothers, his father rebuked him and said to him, "What is this dream that you have dreamed? Shall I and your mother and your brothers indeed come to bow ourselves to the ground before you?" And his brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the saying in mind. So one incidental before we get to the meat of the story. This is the last of the statements, verse 2. In yours it says, this is the history, is it?
The history, yeah.
The history of Jacob? Well, the literal is, these are the generations of Jacob. So this is the 10th of the Toledoths, the statements like that, where you have in the last chapter, for instance, at the beginning of the descendants of Esau, these are the generations of Esau, that is Edom. So this is the 10th and last of these divisions of the book of Genesis that go all the way back to chapter 2, the beginning of chapter 2 of Genesis, where you have the generations of the heavens and the earth. So the commentators make much of this today, that namely the whole book is organized around these generation statements.
And the thing in the Bible, too, is that sometimes they're not putting things in chronological order necessarily. They'll give you a history and kind of get through certain factors or people, and then end with the one they really want to talk about the most that has significance for the future.
Yeah, so the side stories are dealt with first, and then we move to the main story.
But not in chronological order. So
Delitzsch deals with that in the comment we'll read in a couple of minutes.
Okay.
Delitzsch is in effect saying that we might get the impression that, for instance, Isaac is already dead.
Because we've
read that back in 35 before we got to the generations of Esau.
Yeah.
But he's actually still alive at this point.
During this part,
during
this
chapter
section.
37.
Yeah.
Which is a good example of what you just said.
It's sort of like with movies, they'll sometimes not put things in chronological order. They'll tell you something that happened and then go back in time and tell you how it led up to that, and then end with the same thing.
So you've got in movies and stories flash back, but there's also flash forward.
Yeah.
And this death of Isaac back in 35 was a flash forward, right?
Okay.
But then there's the real meat of this, which is the favoritism.
Yeah.
Which leaves a very bad taste, not just I don't think it leaves a bad taste just in the mouths of his brothers. It also leaves, I think it should leave a bad taste in our mouths. Like, what's Jacob think he's doing here?
Yeah. So it's funny, when we were witnesses, we always just tried to see favorable. Everything is, and this is a good guy, so we got to make everything great. Whereas even reading this as a family, Max reads it and thinks, "Oh, well, he seems really like a pain." in the neck. Like that's a young person's look at, well, yeah, you can see why his brothers didn't like him. He tattletales and then he's bragging about these dreams. Even if he had them, he must know, Max thinks, that this is going to cause irritation.
Is he naive then, or does he have bad motives here?
Yeah, we don't know.
Arrogant.
But regardless of motivations that aren't clearly stated here, what we do know is the brothers saw their father's favoritism of him, and so there would have been built-in resentment to him, irritation, and this is very true to life, I would say. Personal conflicts like that, brothers, rivalry between them, that's normal in any family. This is a particularly bad case of it, I would say, in their story. But God seems to just use their circumstances, their family makeup, and he just lets those circumstances work towards getting Joseph in Egypt. And this is the way Joseph later says, it's God that sent me to Egypt, not you, his brothers. He just used their bitterness towards him to serve his purpose.
Yeah. Now,
Providence.
the providential prophecy here about his own brothers and his father even bowing down to him. Well, we don't know how that's going to play out, and Joseph doesn't either.
Yeah.
And whether you think it's at least an indication of not so good character in Joseph or not, because we have a lot of Christians, like you said, who leap to his defense and say, no.
Yeah.
He's naive at the worst. Well,
Yeah.
whatever, because it's not really dealt with here. What his motivation was, is it?
Yeah.
But the point is, God uses it for good ultimately, and Joseph sees it that way.
Right. Mm-hmm.
We got some good quotes then. Delitzsch on this flash forward, flash back thing. Delitzsch says, since at Joseph's elevation in his 30th year, 13 years had elapsed since he was sold, in this his 17th year, Isaac was then, when Joseph disappeared, 167 years old, because he lives to be 180, we're told. Hence he shared for 13 years the grief of his son Jacob for the loss of Joseph. I wouldn't have thought of that.
No, I wouldn't have either.
Without Delitzsch's help. And his life ended in the deep, unilluminated darkness of this sorrow. The history buries him thus early in order, that is back in chapter 35. The history buries him thus early in order to pass over his grave to the new great turn in the history of Israel. Hitherto, the history of Jacob had been always subordinated to the history of Isaac, from which Jacob starts and to which he returns. Yeah, for instance, we just had Jacob and Esau getting back together to bury Isaac.
Yeah.
That story is now over, even though he's still alive. But now that he has become the father of 12 sons, from whom the 12-tribe nation of Israel descends, his own independent Toledoth, the generations of, may begin.
Yeah.
That's a good explanation, a little bit tangled.
Yeah. Yeah. Okay, so Kidner says, like Isaac and Jacob before him, Joseph is introduced as a specially chosen member of his family. This divine election is one of the themes of Genesis, and God's design is seen to be no more thwarted by the indiscretion of its allies, here Israel and Joseph, than by the malice of its opponents. The account of the dreams coming at the outset makes God, not Joseph, the hero of the story. It is not a tale of human success, but of divine sovereignty. Israel had learned nothing from his early experience of favoritism. It would bear an even heavier crop of hatred and deceit than it had yielded in his own youth. Because he had used deceit, right? Because of favoritism.
You think he would have learned from that, his own bitter experience?
But that's true to life too. We don't often. We do the same mistakes our parents did. For the next one is Edersheim. For the proper understanding of what follows, it is necessary to bear in mind that what may be called the personal history of the patriarchs ceases with Jacob, or rather that it now merges into that of the children of Israel, of the family, and of the tribes. The purpose of God with the patriarchs as individuals has been fulfilled, or had been fulfilled, when Jacob had become father of the 12, who were in turn to be the ancestors of the chosen people. Hence the personal manifestations of God to individuals now also ceases. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's a great point that I don't think I would have noticed without the help of a commentator.
Yeah.
The manifestations, the theophanies cease here. Yes, it's true that Jacob gets a message, a vision, a dream. Joseph, of course, has dreams. We just saw that.
Yeah.
And he interprets dreams in the future, but the theophanies, that is, the personal appearances of God, cease until, well, what's the next one? The burning bush?
Moses.
Hundreds of years later?
Yeah.
And then Sinai?
Yeah.
So the relationship between that and the land and the name, because we're told in Exodus that as for the name Yahweh, they did not use this name during the patriarchal period. After this, although it's here before this, we've made the point a couple of chapters ago that the name has ceased to occur in the latter chapters of Genesis.
So I think we oftentimes just assume things happen all the way through. So you'll hear people talk about miracles all through the Bible. And they're not all through the Bible either. There's given slots of time where you find miracles happening.
And what were those?
Usually
at periods?
At periods where there's a change of direction or
new revelation.
A new thing happening, and so you want the people to follow. Say Moses.
Mm-hmm. So the period of Moses and Joshua is one of those, the first of them. And then Elijah and Elisha, when the prophets are starting to get visible.
Yeah. And then during the preaching of Jesus.
Yeah.
During his ministry, there's miracles. So it's not all the way through every generation had miracles.
So the text that you need to fix on, if you have that impression from what the world says about the Bible and the credulity of people in those days and all that stuff that's in the media, right? Yeah. No, it's not true. There were only 3 great periods for miracles in the Bible. Moses and Joshua's generation, Elijah and Elisha's overlapping generation. Did I say overlapping? And Jesus and apostles' overlapping generation. So there's 3 great periods of miracles in the Bible.
Yeah. And
there, of course, there's miracles or providential miracles interspersed, but no great periods of outstanding visible miracles that the public would be prone to think of as without explanation. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So we're going to link to a 3-way prophetic connection: the land, the name, and the theophanies. See you next time.